So morning guys, I'm top of Sarajevo and today we're doing a war tour and this is our tour guide, Prince Emmanuel. Emir. Yeah, I never would have walked up here on myself, so I'm happy we have a car.
Please follow me, you will have a better view.
Oh. Wow. Look at this, guys. I see a cannon already. How cool is this? It was, wow, it's absolutely beautiful.
So guys, one more time, welcome to the capital city of the Bosnia and Herzegovina, welcome to the capital city of the canton Sarajevo, and to the biggest city of the Bosnia and Herzegovina. This city in front of us is definitely the city that has something to offer. The circle of the siege was going from the two sides of the airport because the airport was controlled from the UN. UN wasn't letting anyone to go over the runway, and basically they were shooting on the people who tried to go over the airport. So Serbs closed the circle of the siege from the two sides. Basically from this side it was going and catching up with that hill and going on the mountain of the Trebević. Here basically splitting the mountain of the Trebević, then here going behind of that hill, following the hills, going down from that side, and now we will go on the other side of this hill, and again going up on the hill of the Žuč, following that line and closing from this side a circle. A length of this circle was 65 kilometers. Now, if you take the official number of the all artillery gun and if you divide with 65 kilometers, you will get a number that on every 35 meters was actually one artillery gun that was shooting this city 1,425 days. Now,
every night in Sarajevo, you think it can't get worse, but it does.
You know, the hardest thing about war is not knowing how long it's going to last. And in the beginning, you're always hopeful, you're always optimistic, thinking maybe it'll be quick, maybe it won't really be a full invasion, maybe it'll end very quickly and there won't be too many casualties. But when there's an event like the bombing of a children's hospital here in Sarajevo, the maternity hospital, that's when the locals knew that this was not going to be quick and that this was going to be, these guys are declaring a real war. Same thing happened in Ukraine when the Russians started attacking the maternity hospital in Mariupol.
Because those reports that a maternity and children's hospital has been hit by Russian strikes.
Under constant attack, nowhere in the city of Mariupol is safe. This is what's left of a maternity and children's hospital. But there has been widespread shock and outrage that such a building could have been hit.
The maternity hospital today, like several hours ago, was ruined with the women and the newborn in it. Several hours ago, it was hit.
That's when people really knew, definitely it's not just military targets, they're bombing civilian targets as well, especially with mothers and children still in there. So there was 150 mothers in this maternity hospital behind me, and you can see from the holes in the artillery fire, this was all destroyed. And there's a really beautiful diary entry by a 15-year-old boy who was a leukemia patient that was writing and saying, I want to write until my last breath here. He says, it's not enough that leukemia is killing me, but also war has to come and kill me. So, yeah, it's really sad because, imagine being that 15-year-old boy and not knowing what's going to happen. And we're really lucky that he somehow both survived the war, but also leukemia. And now he's actually living in the US now. But can you imagine going through that? There's a new maternity hospital now over the hill, but this is the ruins of the original one. And you can see in the wall, there's the artillery shells and the firing. So he was originally in this building, and he was supposed to run across and into the basement to hide as the army got closer. How insane is that? I used to go on these history tours thinking, wow, it's so interesting. You know, what happened 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 1,000 years ago. That'll never happen again. And now literally people are hiding in basements in Ukraine because of war again. It's insane.
Ludmilla, a mother of two, still can't understand why Russia wants to destroy her country.
Мы уже через такое прошли в 2014 году. Хочу побыстрее это все закончилось. Людей в покое оставить.
Ukraine is a nation of suffering. The next hours will be filled with misery and fear as people cower in the dark from Vladimir Putin's war machine.
So all this was artillery fire? The holes? Wow. It's like
There's
Swiss
still
cheese.
a lot of marks all around the city. Actually, in my apartment, I still have a bullet in a window.
Wow, really?
That went through, yeah. And also on this bridge were killed two first victims of the siege of the Sarajevo. And you can see here the monument.
The Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is the Suada and the Olga. They were the students, and they were also killed here.
Sarajevo, 1993. Bosko Brkic was a Serbian Christian. Admira Ismic was a Bosnian Muslim. Their people were fighting, but they were in love. The city was under siege by Serbs opposed to Bosnian independence. Shells screamed down. Snipers picked people off. More than 11,000 would die, including Bosko and Admira. They hadn't cared about the divisions of the war, but they'd been killed because of them. Bosko and Admira became a symbol for unity and love that resonated around the world.
Just above that building is actually historical building, a historical museum built up in time of the Yugoslavia. And on the right, you can see the American embassy. Basically, from this point, it was a starting point of the biggest military base in Sarajevo, which was a Marshal Tito. And now in these white fences, it is the campus of the University of the Sarajevo. And still inside, you can see the sculpture of the Marshal Tito soul. And the reason why the buildings are so different is actually connected with the system of the socialism that we had in the time of the Yugoslavia. I will mention that later. I want to show you on the left side that huge building. Actually, it was a biggest building on the whole Balkan. That is the building called Bosmal, there. And that is the biggest living building, but before the 2 years, the Belgrade made a new building called Belgrade Underwater, which is today the biggest one, and this is the second biggest building. At the time of the Yugoslavia, it was a pretty important to protect the media. Why? Because the media was used for the indoctrination of the people.
Украины не будет. Не будет такого государства. Вот на этой территории его не будет. В Польше, кстати, там вот любят такое. И вопрос, так сказать, будут его делить или не будут. Или целиком, так сказать, оно будет под контролем России.
The biggest difference that you can see is that these buildings are pretty much same, and the buildings in Upper Town are not the same. Why? Because in the time of the Yugoslavia, the owners of every company were actually workers. Basically the same system that we have today of the shareholders. And every company had the task to build up the building for their workers. So basically up there, every building was built by the different company, and that's the reason why every building is actually different. And this is the part of the Communist Party of Yugoslavia, basically to take the more people to live in the city. And all of these buildings are prepared in the time of the preparation for the Olympic Games.
Thousands of Yugoslavia's residents in colorful, high-tech couture, only moments after 2 o'clock, in a celebration that is vast and grand, colorful and diverse as the world itself. The Olympic Games begin. 50,000 spectators, 15,000 athletes, 49 nations together in peace.
So we are here at the Tunnel of Hope, and it's cash only, no credit cards.
Okay guys, first I will make the explanation here. Now, let's go back to the Yugoslavia. In the Yugoslavian time, basically when the Tito died, they started to prepare for the war and for the dissolution of the Yugoslavia, actually for the creation of the new country, for the great Serbia. That will be first mentioned on the celebration of 600 years from the famous fight that happened on the Kosovo in '89, when the president of the Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milošević, will make the speech.
Od Vlade Republike Srbije zatražio sam da izvrši sve pripreme za formiranje dodatnih snaga u obimu i veličini koje će garantovati zaštitu interesa Republike Srbije i srpskog naroda.
Mi smo na putu da povežemo Srbe od Jadrana do Drine, od Subotice do Kosova. Srpsku! Samo možemo biti odgovorni mi!
On this side, you can see that side of the Igman was actually the free territory, and also from this side and this part of the city is called Dobrinja, and that's the reason why the tunnel will be called Tunnel DB. From this side, which was much easier because they had enough wood to support all of the walls. But the biggest issue was from the siege of the Sarajevo. Basically, we cut down all of the parks that we have to heat the city. We didn't have basically the wood. From that side, they were supporting the walls basically with the chassis of the cars, with the parts, with everything what they could find.
Došlo je do realizacije inicijative o izgradnji tunela ispod piste. Kuća je mobilisana prvom državnom naredbom o izuzimanju objekata za potrebe armije, te iz moje avlije kotacu na broju 34 počelo kopanje tunela, koji će biti završen za 4 mjeseca i 4 dana.
When they have connected two sides, they will replace with the wood also on the other side. Now, the tunnel, the diggings of the tunnel were lasted 4 months and 4 days. It was invested 56,000 of working hours. Tunnel was dug out in 24 hours of the shift. On the digging of the tunnel was around 300 people, and the tunnel will be dug out in the distance of 785.5 meters. The biggest problem was water. There was all the time the floods. Now, what you need to know, that Serbs didn't know about the tunnel. This was a top secret, and all of the diggings and all of the ground which was taken from the tunnel was actually spread around the valley, so they didn't know. That was top secret between the Bosnian army and the UN. They will find out about the tunnel in the August of 1994 in a really stupid way. The general Ratko Mladic, who later on will be convicted in a Hague, and who was the main general of the Bosnian Serbs, he heard about the tunnel, but he couldn't believe it. He took the phone and he called the airport. Some stupid soldiers didn't even ask who is calling, and he asked him, "Hey, how it's going with the tunnel?" and he tell him everything.
Oh.
Where is tunnel, what's the distance, all of the information. Immediately they will start to shoot on both of the entrances from both of the sides. You will see here in front of the house there is a Sarajevo Rose. One grenade killed 9 persons on the entrance of the tunnel. So basically the tunnel was actually the safest part of this trip, because you needed to go all to the city, to go all with the bombs, with the sniper nest, which was hitting all day and the night, and to came here, and this distance was actually the most easiest part. When you go on the free territory of the mountain of Figman and the Belashnica, pretty much you were secured, but inside of the city was the biggest issue. New one, it is open before the 2 months on the 6th April, on the birthday of the city. It should symbolize to the people, it's good, to people how hard it is to go even in the perfect conditions.
So it's like a remake, it's a model.
It is a remake of how the tunnel should look.
Alright, we can go into the tunnel, guys.
Let's go inside.
Tunnel of Hope. Where do we go next?
Okay, please be cautious, there is a rails here.
These are all the people who built it?
Okay. So, as I mentioned, this is the new part, open before the 2 months as the new investment from the government. This is the distance of 100 meters and should symbolize to all of the people who came here how actually hard it is to go in the perfect condition of the tunnel. You saw on the footages that tunnel had a lot of issues with the water, there was a lot of turns, and what was the best regarding the tunnel? They didn't miss each other. When they came from the 2 sides, the distance was only 1 meter. And today, with the modern technology, that is a really hard to succeed to connect the 2 sides. So basically, that was like maybe good luck, maybe the help from the God, or we never know. Height of the tunnel was having a lot of differences. The original height should be 160, from 160 up to 2 meters. But of course, because of the lack of the material and everything else, it wasn't like that. And later on, when you go to the original part, you will see how the original tunnel actually looked like. This red line symbolized the phone line, because all phone lines were dead inside of the city, and basically the people from other side, the sibling, the family, didn't know anything about their family inside of the city. They didn't know if they are still alive, what is happening. And this line basically mean that informations were now going out from the city, and this line was controlled by the Bosnian army. It was the monophase line, but it was some kind of the communication between the people. The second thing is a water pipe. The water was main resource. We didn't have a water inside of the city. All of the natural springs inside of the city were taken off inside of the network of the whole city. So basically, and that network was cut off in the first days of the siege. So basically, this pipe meant a life. From other side, there was always a truck which was carrying a water. That truck was protected with the UN transporters and was carrying water to the center of the city. Actually, most of the people in Sarajevo was killed in the lines for waiting of water. This pipe symbolized the electrical pipe. This electrical pipe was not
for whole city. It was only for the hospital of the city. In the front of the museum, you will see the engine from the car Fiat 126, which was rebuilt by our engineers to produce the electric energy. Thanks to that engine, over 200,000 operations were done inside of the hospital of the Sarajevo. And thanks to that, of course, we're still keeping that engine in the front. Let's go now through the tunnel.
Oh shit, good thing I already hit my head, good thing I have this helmet on. Good thing we're skinny. Yeah, this is definitely very hard to walk through this. So this is the remake. So this one's like the nice version of it, but imagine the old version. Again, second time hitting my head.
There's a reason why we have helmets.
Oh, it's easy for you.
Yeah, that's the thing I have. Just looking at it, it's different.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I'm comfortable. I have plenty of space.
But when you go to the original tunnel, you will see it won't be easy even for you. On this side, we have a Croatia. Croatia is a part of the NATO. Here, we have the Serbia. Serbia is traditionally always good with the Russians. And we have a Montenegro. Montenegro was following all the time the politics of the Serbia. And it was the last country that went out from the alliance with the Serbia in the 2005. Now, Montenegro, before the few years, they have a new politic which turned back to the Serbian politic. Even they divide the church from the Serbian church. They don't want to be on that part of the history. And now Montenegro became part of the NATO. With Montenegro becoming part of the NATO, Russia lost way out of the Mediterranean Sea. And the last territory, which is the closest to the Mediterranean Sea, is actually territory of the Republic of Srpska. Luckily, and thanks to the Joe Biden administration, they prevent to them pronounce independence, and any new drawings of the lines will cause a new war. Please understand that genocide in the Srebrenica is not the first genocide on the Bosniaks. It is the 11th. And we are still not sure that they are going to do it again. It was to protect the people from the snipers, so the sniper doesn't see the people. And we love to say there is a many actually beautiful things that happen under these scarves, and this wedding is definitely that. This is the main street of Marshall Tito with the signs "Watch Sniper Children." And this is the father and son, and this is the inside of the Sarajevo Tunnel.
So guys, what's really crazy is that we're going through the history of the war here, and we're looking at old black and white photos, and normally it would be like, wow, that's crazy to happen. But I'm looking at these photos and I'm like, I've seen these in person in Ukraine just a few weeks ago. So this is happening right now again. It's insane. Like literally, this is what I saw in Ukraine just a few weeks ago. This could be Kharkiv. This could be Irpin and Bucha.
Is the owner of this house, and in all of the time of the existence of the tunnel, she was standing here and sipping the water to the old people.
All right, so now we are going to go into the original tunnel itself.
Here you can see the picture of the most famous people who actually visit the tunnel, like huge Hollywood stars like Morgan Freeman, Kevin Spacey, Travolta.
And now Johnny F.G.
For example, the Hodžić is actually most famous surname in the Bosnia, and this is the list of all Hodžić who actually lost their life. Behind your back, you can see here the picture of the family
of the Kolar who were in charge for keeping and protecting the tunnel, and also after the war they were waiting here and guessing all of the terrorists.
Wow, so all these people were killed during this siege, during this war. It's insane. Over 11,000 people.
You can go to see the guns. As we had the embargo on the guns, basically people inside of the Sarajevo were making guns from the water pipes, from everything. A lot of people actually died, lost their life because of the explosions of that gun, but actually we were defending the city with the water pipes. So suggestion to go there to wash the weapons, then to go through the original 25 meters of the tunnel, and there's a way out. I will be waiting you there.
So probably the craziest thing that I heard during this tour is that if Kyiv was taken as originally planned within 3 or 8 days, that Serbia was actually going to take the whole Srpska Republic, which is basically the entire right side of the country, because they knew that they could, and they would join. They would have the support of Russia, and it's insane that this is in 2022, guys. Wow, that's way smaller than the other one. This one is way, way, way shorter. Like, ow, I hit my head so many times already. But actually, pretty well made. So, I'm so glad it wasn't longer than that. Can you imagine going down that for a kilometer?
The president, and the report called for lifting the arms embargo and using air power to strike at the Serbian genocidal undertakings that were just that. Back then, I was not the only one in the world community, but I came back and pointed out that this was raw, unadulterated genocide. That the Serbs had set up rape camps, a policy explicitly designed to take Muslim women primarily into camps, rape them, have them carry the children to term in order to intimidate and pollute the Muslim people in Bosnia. Everyone said that wasn't going on. This was not 1937 or 1938 or 1940, but now no one questions it occurred. Remember coming back after going up through Mount Igman and over the mountains into a place called Kisseljack and going through villages and coming back and saying, there are graves. You could ride through a village in the mountains and see.
This is the palace of the Serbian member of the presidency, and he built this palace only for himself.
Next home, a hole in the ground. Next home, perfectly kept. 2 holes in the ground or a chimney sticking up after that. And graves at the end of the town road. And I was told by our own people, as well as the French, God bless them, and the Brits, that these folks are all the same. They're all bad guys. They're all like this. They've all been doing this for all of the last 4 centuries. Which is historically inaccurate and was inaccurate in terms of what was taking place at the time. Represent our interests and our values, and nothing that has happened since the end of World War II represents our values. How many in this chamber, like me, have gone to Holocaust memorial events and heard the refrain, never again, never again? On the same continent, in the same proximity, to the same death camps, it is happening again and happened again.
It was actually only reasonable politician in the world who actually speak aloud what's happening here, because all of them were saying like this: they are all sane. We're not sane. 95% of the convicted crimes in the International Court of Hague is actually the Serb, and only 1% it is of the Bosnian army, and the criminals are the criminals. But as he said, we didn't organize the concentration camps, we didn't did ethical cleanings and all of the bad things. All of the criminals that were convicted from the Bosnian side are actually mostly the individuals who would decide to make the revenge. You can see a lot of like cuttings, and he also said for this road that he doesn't want to repair it because he doesn't want to feed the Muslim people, because all of the touristic attractions are from the Federation side. And now, by the pressure from the High Representative, they needed to start to repair the road. Basically, the road started to go downhill, but they are really slow in the repairings.
So this road cuts through both Republika Srpska and also the Federation.
I will show you later the best line to see the best difference. Is now making a new building here, which will be like a huge circular company with all of the cool stuffs and things like that.
I see what you mean about the roads.
What about?
Now I understand about the roads.
Yeah. Usually they do like this. This is basically under the pressure from the High Representative.
So they
just start to work and they just go.
They just stop. Yeah. Wow.
Dobar dan, kako ste?
Dobro, kako ste vi?
Evo, dobro je, vala.
Dajte malo vaš ispravak.
Može. Malo umor. Malo vozamo turiste, prijatelje, Maja.
Svi imaju, jel?
Sam baš zapamtio, živjeli ljudi, prijatelji. Republika Srpska, and some parts of the road are the Federation. So basically you need to go through the Republika Srpska. This is not Serbia, this is entity Republika Srpska. It is still, we are still in Bosnia.
But Serbia wants this to be part of Serbia.
You're going to check if we're Americans? Actually, he was scared when I tell him that you are Americans, because they don't like Americans. You are like on the top of the list of the enemies. And so usually I should stop here, and then we should continue by walk, because it's minutes and 5 seconds.
So this is the bobsled track.
Yep.
Wow. Wow, so this is the old bobsled track from the Olympics.
Okay guys, just before welcome to the mountain of the Trebević. As I mentioned, this is the smallest Olympic mountain, but the most beloved one. Why? Because here in this direction, just 5 minutes from here, it is the cable car station, and people from the cable car station love to come here to enjoy in the fresh air and to walk all around the mountain. The most famous attraction on the mountain is definitely the bobslide, the bob track, and it was the biggest attraction in the time of the Olympic Games, because we didn't have the national team for the bob track, and all of the people were excited in the war and after the war in the Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Slow down at all, people are Where's he going?
Okay, ready to slide down.
stadium.
All right. That was the fastest lap. I would like to have the more time with you to show you everything and to tell you the stories, but I hope that after these tours you will have a wider picture of all of the events that happen in the city, in our states, and all of the struggles that we have. We have a huge problem because the young people are deciding to leave the country, and they are all taking the salt in front of their houses. Fights with the ice.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All the best for your family. Enjoy our city. Thank you.
Tell me your name again.
My name is Amir. That means the prince. As you can see, I'm not the prince. I'm the tour guide. And welcome to the Sarajevo.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
So guys, I'm with some new friends. Hello, also from the US. So we're all on the tour together, and we decided to have some traditional Bosnian food together. So this is what the guide recommended. It's called a Bosnian pot, and it has what? Potatoes, veal, carrots. This is nice. This looks good. It looks like a Swedish meatballs from IKEA. Is it chicken or?
It's like a pasta.
Oh, yeah, I've had those. Oh, you know what? I had those. They're good. Okay. So, bon appetit. All right. So that was an excellent lunch, and now we're walking by this Chibabazida, which they're serving these traditional kebabs. And this place, I think, is one of the most popular ones because it looks super crowded inside. This whole street, the old town, is full of places to eat and drink. So one thing that makes life and peace so difficult here in Bosnia is there's 3 distinct ethnic groups or religions. There's the Bosnian Serbs, which are closer to Serbia. Then you have the Bosnian Muslims, and then you have the Bosnian Croatians. So you have the Muslim religion, you have the Orthodox religion, and you have the Christianity or Catholic. So there basically there's 2 churches and the mosque. And that's why first architecturally you see all 3 here, which is very cool. But it makes it very hard for government. So this country actually has 3 presidents, guys. A president that's Serb, a president that's Croat, and a president who is Muslim.
Bosnia is inaugurating its 3 newly elected presidents. They represent the country's 3 main ethnic groups: Serbs, Bosnian, Muslims, and Croats. Each president will rotate seats every 8 months.
This arrangement was made under a peace deal that ended the Bosnian War in the 1990s. Nationalism dominated the country's election, fueling fears Bosnia could face more ethnic division in the future.
And because they can't really get along, right? Because obviously you can't have 3 presidents making decisions and butting heads. So you also have a 4th person who is neither of those. And this time he was a German guy, basically, who's basically the head decision maker. And he can create new laws that everybody has to follow. So he's almost kind of like not a prime minister, but someone who would have the actual veto power. So I think it's kind of the only way it works. It's crazy. So, actually being the tour guide had a lot to talk about because he grew up here. He lost his brother in the war. He personally is Bosnian Muslim, so I'm sure if I spoken to a Bosnian Serb or Bosnian Croat, they would have their different opinions, but he was super grateful of Joe Biden because he was the only one who was really speaking out against everything that was happening. I tried to get the US involved. The UN was actually here for a long time, and the people here really were unhappy with the UN. you know, when it comes down to it, it was better that they were here than if they weren't, but barely. They said like they did almost kind of the bare minimum. They supplied a little bit of humanitarian aid and food, but people were still starving. They did a little bit of peacekeeping, but really they just stood by and just took notes and watched. And if that had gone on for 2, 3, 4 months, it'd be understandable that they need to like create a report, decide what to do, and then you know, figure out how to, you know, create peace. But they let it go on for like 7 years. It was insane. And the really famous photo or portrait, that is a piece of graffiti that they found from one of the UN Dutch peacekeepers. I knew they weren't American because they spelled smells incorrectly, which is not that hard to spell. But yeah, like the UN here really just didn't do much. All right. So as you can see by the not one but 2 Taycans parked right behind me, and some of these nice cars, like there's like a nice Mercedes there. There's definitely money in the city, but the average salary is way less than $1,000. I think they said it was actually closer to like $500. So most people leave to Germany or leave to the EU, leave to other countries to work. Almost all of the Croats have a Croatian passport, and almost all the Serbs all have a Serbian passport. So the Serbs normally go to Belgrade because it's a bigger city, better universities, more jobs. The Croats go to the EU because they're part of the Schengen. Well, not part of the Schengen, but they can freely travel to the EU. And really, it's just the Bosnian Muslims that have to stay here because they have really nowhere else to go. This country still has a ton of corruption, all the way from the government level down to the local police, who literally tried to shake down our driver for no reason. That's just kind of like a random checkpoint. They just asked for bribes. And my guide has had to pay it many times. Pickpocketing most likely is a racket where some politician or policeman is getting paid to let them stay on the street because it's very obvious who they are and that they're doing it every day. So if the government really cared, the police really cared, they can very easily stop them, but they just don't care because somebody's probably getting paid for it. Infrastructure-wise, it seems like no one really cares that much about you know how the everyday person lives here, or even about how tourists are, as I talked about in my previous video. So I feel very bad for this country. I'm happy I came because there's so much history here, and it so similarly describes what's happening in Ukraine now. But I still can't recommend it for most tourists unless you really have some kind of roots here, or you have someone to tie, or you really want to understand their war. Not even World War I, because honestly, I didn't know that much about it. I just saw where it happened, where it started, but it's really about the Bosnian War. Yeah, that's about it. So today's my last day here, and I'm glad I got a little history in, but time to move on, guys.